Welcome to Setting the Table, hosted by Robin B., where we bring you the insider's scoop from top restaurateurs, industry experts, and creative minds who know what it takes to stand out and succeed. Hungry for insights on how to fuel your growth and stay ahead of the curve? You've just found your secret ingredient.
Hello, everybody. This is Robin B. I'm excited to be here today. I'm talking to Rebeccah Rybalski, and she's a seasoned research, analytics, and strategy leader with over 25 years of experience. She's worked in CPG, retail, and technology industries. She's now the founder of the Rybalski Consulting Group. She specializes in transforming complex data into actionable insights that drive business growth and help expand on strategies that either are there or maybe don't exist yet and should exist. Her expertise spans a wide range of research methodologies, including Nielsen, IRI, analytics, as well as consumer insights, which help brands stay ahead of market trends. So, Rebeccah is super passionate about leveraging data to refine strategy. She really makes a connection between businesses and their consumers. I'm so excited to have her here. She's going to give us some practical tips on how to use data analysis as a restaurant. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the other industries she works on, but we will try to taper the conversation to restaurants. So, with that, welcome, Rebeccah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. It's really awesome to have you on the show. And I know you're in San Francisco, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, um, 2 hours difference. So I appreciate you getting up early in the morning to talk to
Not a
me.
problem.
All right. So, before we get into sort of the questions, I did want to ask you sort of just to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got to where you're at today, um, and so forth. So,
Yeah, so I'm in San Francisco now, originally from Brooklyn. I kind of got hooked early. I was always very passionate about data, solving problems. And when I was in college, I concentrated in marketing and we did a case study on IRI. And this is going to sound really dorky, but I was fascinated and I called them during the career fairs. And that was my first job out of college. I was like, I did a case study. I have to work with you. But
that's awesome.
that's how I started. And that was a great company to start with at the time because they offer so many different solutions. So I got a really good feel for how much information is really out there. How do you use it? How do you leverage it? What are the right ways to analyze it? Or efficient ways? There's no real right way, I should say, but the most efficient way. And I always had this desire to learn more and develop my own skill sets. With IRI, one of the things that I noticed is that I would deliver things to clients, but then not see where it went. And so I wanted to get that experience. So I moved over to Cal Brands in order to do that and manage all their syndicated services. But from there, it just took off. Like every new role that I had was a new opportunity to learn, grow my skill set, adapt to changes. Um, Moving to the retail CPG side, more so with Kellogg's and Kraft Heinz. And then from there, as technology started to become more and more prevalent in consumers' minds and how they were doing things, just really had this desire to be part of that trend. So I went to Instacart to really try to understand, like, how does this all work? How do tech companies work? How do consumers interact with technology? And what are the opportunities there? And I realized my whole career was about helping CPGs evolve with the changes in the industry based on the consumer. And that after spending a few years in technology, that's kind of led me to where I am today. It's, trying to figure out where the trends are and how I can help companies get there and leverage the information and make decisions based on that because things change so quickly. Um,
Really quickly, right? Like
yeah, and
technology has
they're
changed
not. It's not
everything.
going to stop.
No,
So
I think it's
yeah,
just getting more and more and faster, which
yeah,
which is tough, right? Because if you don't have a handle on one, getting the information, and then also then that piece, it's a science and an art at once, right? Because it's
exactly. Yeah,
taking data that can probably be interpreted 1,000 different ways and trying to find the most effective applicable way that it makes sense to use it.
Yeah.
So, how do you think data helps businesses make better decisions? Like, what do you think the big sort of aha is that businesses should kind of keep in mind when it comes to data?
So data helps you understand how you're doing, what you're doing. The consumer helps you understand why it's going or why things are trending a certain way. So for companies that aren't leveraging their data, they might be missing something. I think they have experience and that's great. And I think that's got them to where they are today. And I think some companies are going to be fine just doing that. I think where the data comes in is it helps you scale and identify those opportunities that you may not have seen otherwise.
It's not necessarily always going to tell you something completely new, but it's grounded in
Mhm.
reality, right? So
Yeah.
even you may have hypothesized why someone does something, but until you really look at the data, you don't fully know.
Right.
And so I think that's awesome. And I think more and more as we've just advanced in technology, especially with AI and stuff, it's just we're entrenched with that. Like it's
Yeah.
like overwhelming how much
There's so
information
much.
we get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So bridging that gap is pretty important. Um, so if I took that back to restaurants, restaurants, obviously most of them have a POS system where they're
Mhm.
tracking sales or seeing their consumers. Like, how do you think? Is there anything specific to restaurants that you think is a smart way they should be using their data as points to make decision?
For restaurants, the data that they have, the POS data, that's gonna help them see how they're trending. There's a lot of good data that's already out there. I wouldn't s I don't know if it's classified as syndicated or not, but in terms of menu offerings and food service, there's Data Essentials and Technomic. There's MPD, Supply Track. I'm not sure if they've changed their name, but that'll give you really good insight into how you're doing versus your competition, and you get a lot of great insight. I think for Data Essentials in particular, with menu offerings and what's coming next. They do a really good job of telling you or analyzing what ingredients are trending and what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years, or what food formats are trending and what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years. What's a good one? Menu offerings. So there's a whole section on menu trends that's already out there and available. I'm not sure every company has it. I'm not sure how diverse their offerings are for small companies versus large companies. But I think just knowing that that's out there, there's a lot of really good data to help restaurants already. And then I think what really brings it to life is tying that back to the consumer and really understanding who's your consumer versus your competitors versus do you have different segments of consumers in there? And if you have that information, because companies will still do internal research, I would leverage that and try to kind of hone that in and tie it together with your sales. Why might we be seeing a trend here versus here? And if you don't have that information, think through, do you know your consumer and what might you need to know?
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And um, so you talked about a specific data. What are some data companies or data information that are out there, right? Because most of our restaurants they have their own POS, right?
Yeah.
So Toast is a very popular POS. Aloha, Focus, like there's a bunch of them, right? And so they'll gather a certain amount of information from there on their sales. They can certainly extrapolate information about their consumer based on that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they can make inferences from that too, right? Okay, when I did this, my lunch crowd increased this much or whatever. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, but there's a lot of other information that they really do still have access to it. You maybe need to go online and look at it and connect the dots. But what are some of those pieces or sources of information? And you kind of named a couple, but maybe you could name a few that they might consider looking at, or at least going online and the kind of trends they might research online, see what they can
Yeah.
find.
I think Technomic does a really good job of outlining the food service industry and restaurants and what the forecast looks like. in the future. If a company's trying to figure out where they are and what the future looks like, they do a really good forecast outlook there from a sales perspective, from their data. I think that Data Essentials does a really great job of helping on the menu side and trends of that sort. So, but I think there's a lot of information out there that may be accessible to the restaurant. I'm not sure in what format. When you think about the last mile and companies like DoorDash or Grubhub and just even Open Table, there's a way seeing if you could tap into that and what do your consumers look like? Who else are they going to? What are the different customizations that they make? I can imagine there's a ton of great information that would help them both offline and online with their solutions.
I agree. And y- Toast, uh, DoorDash, Grubhub, OpenTable, if you are a vendor of theirs, you can sign up for newsletters, you can sign up for insight information. They do share
Mhm.
some of those insights, and it's pretty wise for a restaurateur to take a look at those and maybe sign up for some of them.
Yeah.
If you go and research online, a lot of times you'll see their blogs or their information pop up. You're not going to necessarily get information that is your restaurant, but you get good nuggets that are
Yeah.
applicable to your restaurant, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a matter of kind of pulling that into what you know and then what's bigger trending. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of companies, when I was at Instacart, I think you could get access to your own data. Maybe not necessarily the category or the industry, but even if you have your own data, I think that's a great place to start. And then you can always, as you grow and scale, you can evolve and bring in other solutions. One thing I do think when it comes to research and analytics, it changes just as fast as technology in terms of solutions. You've got to be quick. I don't think we can wait a year anymore or 3 to 6 months for insights. Like there are tools out there to get insights within 24 hours if you really wanted to. So I think just as you start bringing data into the culture and leveraging it, there's so many ways to just accelerate from there quickly based on where you are in your budget cycle or anything like that. Like, but starting with your own data, wherever you can get it from, online, offline, I think is a great place to start.
Yeah. So when I talk to restaurant owners, a lot of times they'll say, I'm supposed to have a target consumer, but how do I find that? Who that is? Like I have a guesstimate of who it is based on who walks in the door and what I see on a regular
Right.
basis. But how do I really sort of narrow that down to maybe some of the more analytical pieces? Do you have any advice on where they might look at that either in their POS or elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good place to start is just understanding what's the demographic of the folks that come into your restaurant. Um, there's a there's a what's the right word? There's your actual consumer and your aspirational consumer. If you don't know your aspirational consumer, look at who's coming in the door. Look at what you were trying to build. There's companies, creative companies that could help you get there, but there's also just, you can go to the US Census, look at your area, look at your zip code, find
Yeah.
out who lives there, and then there are ways that you can tailor your message, but outside of demographics, you can look at what are people ordering? Like what um, types of foods are more interesting? Are there a group of people that like spicier versions, non-spicy, different flavors of things that you offer, and see how you can potentially message them differently. I think today it's actually easier with AI and technology to personalize things for customers than it
Yeah.
was previously.
Yeah.
Um, like if you think of DoorDash or even the kiosks in restaurants now, like to make it easier to order, there's a lot of data in there in terms of how customers are um, customizing their meal. And so once you know that, it can fall into some easy. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not easy. Easy algorithm. Or learning, it's not easy. Um, and then you know that they're going to be, when they come back, they're going to see something already customized for them potentially, um, that will make them think that you're targeting them specifically. But I think it's just really important to understand, are there different segments of consumers frequenting your restaurants? What do you know about them? And potentially do you don't have to pay a full service agency to do consumer research. You could survey the people in your restaurant, draft a survey, ask them, certain folks to fill it out, give them a gift card, maybe $5, something along those lines, and get some really good insight into a deeper understanding of, what are the themes between the different segments of consumers that are coming into my restaurant. So yeah.
I love that. I think that's super practical, and I think that's something everybody could do, right? I
Yeah,
think sometimes it's a
absolutely.
little overwhelming. I'll hear, oh, well, it's too difficult to do that. And I liked what you said when you said aspirational versus actual. I know I've worked with restaurants that either maybe they had a consumer that used to be their consumer and maybe it's changed,
Yeah,
or they have a consumer that they think they're serving, but the reality is it's really not the same
exactly.
consumer that they're actually serving. And I think there's a good distinction between those. And I think you have to be really careful to make sure you're realistic about
Yes.
who are you really serving and what do they want? Because if you think you're serving A and you're actually serving B and B wants something very different than A, then there's huge business implications to that. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also liked what you said about looking at your area. I think this is something that I it seems intuitive, but it is quite often overlooked, and doing so on a pretty regular basis, right? Because
Yeah.
people move all the time,
Yeah.
and you know, so I think that that's another area that I've seen where maybe the neighborhoods have changed and the demographics who have moved in and out have shifted, and the restaurant hasn't actually reacted. Um, so when somebody sees something like that, a business sees a change in their area or whatnot, what do you recommend they do with that kind of information and
Mhm.
apply it to their business to improve their success?
Um, Depending how big the change is, I've done some studies on net migration. Since COVID, there's been um, a huge trend of people moving. Uh, I'll use California as an example, away from California to other states, just from an expense and lifestyle situation. So things have really changed. And one of the areas that's changed quite a bit, where a lot of folks from here are moving, is Arizona. Um, for It's a lot more affordable, and you get a similar climate. Um, but you have a whole new consumer now in your area that is used to different things. So I would recommend that you keep a tab on who's in your restaurant as things change. There's free sources, there's a census, there's um, different things that you can do, but you can also have just quick, how do I say it? Like, just quick satisfaction experience surveys at the end of the customer's meal or on the table, or just gather as much information as you can, so um, you could start leveraging that information and making the changes that are needed. It is about just checking in with your consumer, making sure you understand them, get their feedback. And get to know them, see where they're from. Have they lived there? Like, if there's something that's happening, if you notice there's a big change, maybe look at the zip codes they're coming from and see what they look like, and then see if there are adjustments that need to be made or not.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. And I'm guessing like asking the questions, but on also using the information. Do you find a lot of people will do the surveys, but then they never actually put them into use, or like,
Yes, but yes, they do. And so I always recommend not to do a survey. Don't do anything. Don't look at data. Don't do a survey unless you know what it's going to do for you. Like, what's the question that you have? And what do you need to learn to make a decision? If it's not going to get you there, you shouldn't do it because then it's just nice to have and it just sits there on the
Yeah,
shelf.
nothing happens with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It
So
has to
that's
be
a good
actionable.
point. So kinda can you walk through like that step because that's an important step, right? It's like gathering information just to gather information really
Yeah.
doesn't help you a whole lot, right? So do you normally start with like an issue or how do you sort of back out to where you do the
Yes.
research?
I always start with what am I trying to answer for? What's the key business question? What data do I already have before I even go into the data? I'm not looking at anything at this point. What do I need to know in order to make a decision? Is it like what's the success criteria? Is it I need to see um let's say 75% purchase interest or 2% growth in sales? Like what is your metric for saying that you're going to roll something out or move forward? Then you want to assess what data do I have available that can answer this question and really structure where you're going to go to get this information. And then you can start digging in, and it makes it more digestible. It makes it easier to solve for a hypothesis or a decision because you've got more structure around it, you've got a framework around it. The biggest mistake that I see is people just going in. And because there's so much information, it just you fall into that trap of paralysis very quickly. It could be within minutes, it could be within an hour, but it really does distract you and take you away. And the other mistake I see is focusing on a data point that may not be relevant to your question. And it may be interesting and useful at another time, but it's not relevant to what you're trying to answer. So it's really staying focused on what that question is and what you're trying to solve for.
I love that. And I've been guilty of it myself. Like sometimes it's just the amount of information is overwhelming and you're like, shiny new object.
Yeah.
Okay. So I love that advice. And there's a certain amount of this that if you're not comfortable data mining and looking at the information and extrapolating where it's useful, that is where someone like yourself is so valuable because that's what you do day in day out and you're awesome at it. So it's good to kind of know what your comfort level is too, I think, to
Yeah.
recognize whether this is something you want to take on or if this is one of those things where you're like, yeah, I don't even want to go there. I'm going to trust the experts at it. Um, one of the places that I think people are really trying to figure out still how to digest and come to terms with how helpful it is for their business is AI and just the
Yes.
whole piece of that where you've got things that it will do for you, you've got learnings that it could give you. How do you what do you think of that with AI? And if you can kind of I guess hit it as far as restaurants are concerned, but in general, just even um, all businesses, right? What do you sort of see in the future trajectory for how to use AI smartly for small
Yeah.
to medium businesses? Yeah.
I think that's a great way to put it, using AI smartly. I
Right.
think it's already here, it's moving quick, and I know, the question is what's gonna happen in the next 5 to 10 years, and I'm thinking what's gonna happen in the next 6 months. Things are
Right.
moving just so quickly. Um, in terms of research and analytics, there's lots of ways to integrate ChatGPT into Excel and things like that to help you with your analysis. It's crazy, it's awesome, but you gotta be careful because it's based on your inputs. And so you gotta really think about how are you phrasing things, and it's not you're still giving it those prompts. So that's important to remember to not just take the data as it comes back in these solutions. But I think it's going to change the game. And for restaurants specifically, I think the personalization and customization that you can message against I think about it as back in the day when there was, when I was in college, mass marketing versus targeted marketing. That was the big differentiator. I think now we're at a place where you can create a national campaign that feels to every person like it's for them. And I feel that because the way consumers interact today with technology, they expect you. I think that's cost of entry at this point. They expect you to know them, know what they want. And if you don't, I think it's confusing to them. There's so much that's going to change from that sense in marketing. I think for restaurants, and when you think of menu offerings and things like that, the way that you can access the information of what's happening within restaurants, within or however you get it, it's going to really help you figure out how you can revise and optimize almost immediately. And now that you have digital screens for menus, if you do, it's easier to make a change than to purchase. I remember back in the grocery days, once a year when a category would go through a review, they'd have to order shelf tags for the changes. I think with restaurants, there's so much opportunity based on the format, the experience to figure out ways to listen to what's happening. AI within your social media, what are people talking about? AI within your how people are ordering, and then using it when you analyze, but being careful to make sure that you understand it's you driving what's coming out of it. But I think it's gonna go fast, and even on the logistics side, as you're sourcing goods, there's gonna be ways that that could be more efficient too, because you really wanna make sure you can deliver on what you're messaging.
I love that. And you're so right. It is fast. I feel like every time I blink, there's a new technology or another format coming out that's leveraging AI.
Yeah,
I think for restaurants, your POS system is quite often your centralized point of data, and being
yeah,
able to take that and to leverage that well and maybe leverage AI in combination might be a wise thing to be considering because
absolutely.
your POS allows you to see what people bought. You can see their history, you can
Right.
segment based on the kind of person they are. And when I say the kind of person they are, like, are they your regular lunch crowd? Are they someone who loves a specific kind of food? Do they always look for deals, or are they more of a they don't care and they're big spenders, right? You can
Right.
categorize and segment those in a very specific way. And then your AI piece can come in and layer on top of that to really make it personalized. And I think the personalization, you're absolutely right.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
I did recently, it's a small example, but was looking through POS data, trended data, using ChatGPT for Excel, which I can show folks how to use. It's just always want to say be careful, but use it. Um, but looking at POS data and the trends, it's amazing how quickly it'll pull out an insight for you, um, but you need to check it. But the other part that was really cool is outside of the data, maybe you have feedback from your social media. Maybe you have things that you can download and look at what people are saying. It does a nice job of looking at sentiment, how people are feeling, what they're saying, summarizing it. There's a lot of cool things you could do to better understand through your sales and consumer and tie it together now that that type of solution is available. So we do work with companies to do that for them and help them leverage information and bridge the gap. But we do a lot of trainings to also help develop their internal skill sets so that they can do it themselves. Because some companies can't afford um, either larger solutions or outside agencies, but just giving them the tools and tricks that they need to be able to be smarter, more efficient, less overwhelmed, and bridge that gap a little bit more between different data sources like social. I think combining social media insights with your sales data isn't necessarily your first thought, but there's a lot that can be complemented. And AI within a solution like that ties can help you get further along so
For
that you
sure.
can make better decisions.
And there's less guesswork anymore, right? If you're
Yeah.
using data correctly, like that's really the big for me, the aha with data is you don't ever totally remove a certain amount of experience, intellectual knowledge, and
Right.
there's a certain amount of that you are just going to develop. You know your restaurant, you know the people you serve, you know your kind, what you do well and what you
Yeah.
don't do well. But where data can help is it's just that influx of consumer sentiment and um, perspective that you maybe don't really know, right? It's sort of
Right.
like I feel like there's many a times we've all been proven wrong where we're just absolutely, oh, well, I'll speak for myself that I'm sure of something. And then I go look at the data and I'm completely wrong and I'm just shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how could I have been that off? But it happens, right?
Yeah.
Because, if you're talking about the masses, your
Right.
perspective isn't necessarily their perspective. And as much as think you don't know.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, you're a sample of one, so it is valid. It's just it goes back to what are those segments? You might fall here in what you think, but then there's another group that's looking for something different. And data just helps you see those other opportunities.
And when you look at data, you're predominantly looking at quantitative data. But do you look at qualitative at all? Do you recommend that? So, for example, like if someone were doing a menu, I do often say, like, go look and see what's most popular on your current menu. Go look and see maybe what's trending, like what people are looking
Yeah.
for. And then maybe do some qualitative data where you have a small subset of people, have them come taste some things and work on your menu piece by piece. I mean, I don't know if you have any feelings on that for like a menu example, maybe.
Qualitative is very important. But it should be used when you truly need to develop an understanding of what you're doing if you really don't have any insight into, because it can be expensive. That's why I say that. Unless you do, and there are scrappy ways to do it, and I've done that as well. But for like menu offerings, and say you want to introduce a new flavor or a new version, and you're trying to figure out which ones consumers like more, you could do qualitative uh, taste tests. You could do, um, focus groups, get folks in a room and talk about it. I recommend one thing I did do for a restaurant was help them determine what flavors, probiotics, prebiotics are really trending right now. What flavor and texture worked best. And it was a juice. And so they can be, if you've ever had a prebiotic or probiotic drink, they could be thick. They separate in terms, so you got to shake it. And it's definitely a specific target that's drinking that. So they developed four different flavors and different textures, and wanted to see which one would be best for their menu. And they offered, they had little QR codes on their tables for anyone who would be interested in taking this research in their restaurant. And those that signed up for it, they took them to a separate space in the restaurant, had them, somebody was guiding it to make sure they weren't tasting things at different times. They had little saltine crackers as palate cleansers between them so they could really assess each one, but had them rate each one of them to see which one they liked the most, and then their overall preference. And they just looked to see which one did best. And that's how they made that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the quantitative data is great. I feel like it's it directionally is great and because it's concrete, right? The qualitative, though, when it comes to taste testing or something like that, you almost need that, right? Because you've got to be able to gather
Yeah.
like an experience and what people are saying about it. So I
Right.
love that. And so there's kind of a mix of the two is a good, I think, play
Yeah.
if depending on what you're looking for, right?
Exactly. I would say it's very valuable. I would say just see if you know the information already, is always what I say. Like,
Yeah.
do you have anything that could tell you, that could help you make this decision? If not, absolutely. I think there's lots of ways you could do it. You could do it. I don't know if I should use the word scrappy, but we have to be scrappy sometimes. with our budgets and what we can do. There's ways you could do it within your existing set of information, and there's ways that you could pay companies to do it as well. But always, always see if you have the information first. I would recommend, and if not, yeah, absolutely, there should be a mix of the two.
Well, this has been awesome. I so appreciate you. So, people who are interested in working with you, like, can you give us a little bit of information as to where they might find you and how's best to
Yeah,
contact you?
absolutely. So I know we started with, I'm the founder of Rybalski Consulting Group. We are transitioning to Springboard Management Incorporated, just FYI teaser. So next week you'll see
Nice.
a new beautiful
Yay.
logo, and but our services are going to stay the same. It's the same trusted insights, just a new platform to allow us to bring in added expertise, so
Nice.
that we can really help you even more than what we do today. So you can find us at springboardmgt.com. You can email us at either, if you want to, Becca at springboardmgt.com or info at springboardmgt.com. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, uh, looking at more platforms to evolve to. But yeah, you can find us where we love what we do, and we're excited to help in any way if you just need some advice to actually a partner.
I love it. Well, and you're awesome. I worked with you way back when, like decades ago at Cow Brands, and you were super insightful then and what you could do with data. So fast forward however long, we won't
It's
say,
not
but
been that long. Yeah.
a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I know you have that much more vast experience. So I'm excited for folks to reach out to you if they need help with this. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
for
you.
coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Awesome. All right, everybody. That's it. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. See you next time.